News on the air since 1951. This is The Legend. 105.3, 95.3, WDXE.
That's us, The Legend. And speaking of legends, Stan, how are you, my friend?
Thank you. What an introduction that is, right?
Yes, it's time for bulletproof estate planning.
It is
with Stan Pierchoski Law in Pulaski, Tennessee, and of course we like to open up the phone lines, as you say, 766-9393. We don't get a lot of calls, but we'll take them.
766-9393. You say
right.
it too fast. One time I was on one of my other radio shows. Somebody finally got a hold of me and said, "I'd have called you sooner, but you say your phone number too fast, and you only say it once."
You know, I say that number so many times during the morning that I just blurt it out.
I'm sure.
So anyway, glad to have you, of
thank
course.
you.
And it's been a whole week.
It
since I
has,
saw you.
and March the 1st.
So what kind of adventures have you had since I saw you last?
Well, actually, I gave one of my private seminars yesterday.
Oh, really?
Some people invite me to places, and it's right over here, or up towards Summertown at the Unity Baptist Church.
Okay.
They invited me over there to talk to their parishioners, and I did, and it was a pretty good crowd, and what a great bunch of folks. I mean,
Yeah.
they were very interested. They had a ton of questions, which is always my favorite part. And
Yes.
and we were there for a while just answering questions. And before the thing started, they actually fed me. So it was their senior group up there. And
I had forgotten that you are willing to do that if it can be scheduled.
typically what we do is maybe churches, some couple of clubs, like like your Rotary or Exchange Club type people. And surprisingly, I get asked often to talk to employees of an organization.
Yeah.
Banks, I've spoken to several banks. Banks sometimes, when you do these trust plans, we talked, on a couple of these radio shows, how if you have a trust plan, you got to move your property into it.
Yes.
And then we talk about moving your bank account and stuff into it. Well, it's, maybe a year or two ago, a couple of the banks, they were kind of the tellers, people on the floor. Were
Yes.
kind of like not sure why these people were doing this. A lot of people keep coming in and wanting to change a bank account. And so they asked me if I'd come talk to the personnel at the bank and kind of explain to them from a banking perspective what people are doing and why they're doing it and stuff like that. So it's kind of the same thing, only it's from looking at the other side of the desk sometimes at the bank. And it was very helpful to them because now when people come in, they know what they're doing, why they're doing it. It's not, so, I'm available for that. It's just a scheduling kind of thing. The girls will schedule it whenever they can. But like I said, we were up at the church, and there were some good questions. And one question I want to bring up, because it gets asked from time to time, and you'd probably appreciate it. It's kind of a real estate question. And it got asked, I think, twice yesterday in two different ways. It was the same answer, same question, but I want to make sure that people understand it.
Yes.
Because, and I talk about this from time to time, is ownership of real estate. And there's a couple of different ways you can own it. And the question was this: somebody raised the question: if you're a surviving spouse, okay, or a single person, it really wouldn't matter. But if you're single because your spouse passed away, you were just single in the first place, and you decide to deed the property to you and your children, or a child or children. Okay, so you can say me and my son, or me and all three of my children, or something like that. What happens at death with that? Does that just pass to them?
Yes.
And of course, the answer is not as simple as a yes or no. But when the answer to that is no, well, the answer to that is it depends on the language in the deed. But what I think prompted that was we were talking about. Somebody asked a similar question about husband and wife. Okay, so let me just give you the full-blown description, because I think it's important that we understand it. There's a couple of ways to own property in Tennessee, and I'm going to go over two of them. One of them is if you are husband and wife on a deed. So take myself. You can go to look at my deed. If my wife and I own it, it's going to say something like this. It'll say, Stan Pierchoski, edux. E-T-U-X, which is Latin for and wife, okay? And then in the embodiment of the transfer clause, it'll say Stan Pierchoski and wife Tammy Pierchoski, or at the top where it says grantor, grantee. The grantee might say Stan and Tammy Pierchoski, or it might say Stan and Tammy Pierchoski, husband and wife, or something like that.
Yes.
It doesn't have to say husband and wife, but if we are. Now, if you own property as husband and wife in the state of Tennessee,
yes,
if you don't say anything else in the deed, you own it by joint tenants with right of survivorship. Okay. Now, you can say those words, but if you don't say it, that's how you do it. That's the default way to own property
Yes.
in Tennessee. If it's husband and wife, it's right of survivorship. Now, you could sever the right of survivorship. I'm not going to talk about that today. It'd be confusing. It's very rare that anybody would want to do that. But
Yes.
anyway, it's husband and wife right of survivorship. And you don't have to say it in the deed to get it. That's what Tennessee does by default.
Yes.
So at death, I mean, it's pretty simple. Nothing really passes. But at death, so you got the first death and the second death of a husband and wife, right?
Right.
So at the first death, all ownership instantly vests with the survivor
Yes.
by operation of law, which means,
Correct.
and you don't have to fix the deed and take that person's name off. You don't have to
Right.
do anything. At the moment of death, it passes. Now, that's kind of a probate avoidance technique because it happens instantly.
Right.
It doesn't really pass. It's just there's only one survivor now.
That's
know,
what-
you see what I mean? You both own it in your entirety. But at one death, now one of you owns it in the entirety. So nothing actually passed from one to the other. It's just like a vesting of all the ownership into the survivor.
Yes.
So that happens automatically. So I think that's how the question came about. Is what if I do it with let's just use one child. So I'm
Okay.
a single person, and I do it with one of my kids.
Yes.
So I change it to Stan and son.
Yes.
And the answer was it depends. If you just say Stan and son, now you're co-owning it with a non-spouse.
Yes.
Right?
That's correct.
So if you co-own it with a non-spouse, the default value, absent any further language, is going to be a 1/2 undivided interest each.
Correct.
Now it could be different percentages. I mean, but you'd have to say that. If you say nothing, the default's going to be half. But you could say something like Stan Pierchoski 7/10 and son 3/10 or something. But either way, it's an undivided interest,
Yes.
which means which means at death, that is an inheritable asset. Meaning, if I'm the one if it's 50-50 and I'm the one that passes away, that doesn't go to the other owner. I still own that, and my estate has to deal with that. So if I have a will and says everything I own goes somewhere else, then my son will own it with whoever it goes to
Yes.
because it's an inheritable asset. It's like money in the bank. And so it's something I still own at death. It hadn't left me because of the right of survivorship. Now, the reason I say it depends is you can own property with a non-spouse with right of survivorship. But you have to say the words in the deed. You have
has
to
to
say
be said.
tenants in common with right of survivorship. That has to be said, or you don't get it.
Yes.
So I told somebody asked that question yesterday, and I could see the look on their face. They were a little concerned because they had done that. Okay, and their goal, I think, was for it just to pass to the children.
Yes.
And so I was glad to bring a smile to their face because I said, but don't panic. I said, it's 100% fixable. We just do another deed
Yes.
and say the words. It's
Yes.
that simple. And then it's a done deal. Now we got what you want. So, but again, don't take anything for granted. That stuff has to be looked at to make sure it's done right. But
That's correct.
And I get that question from time to time because folks are looking for ways for the property to go simply. Okay.
Yes.
Now, when you have this undivided, people make people co-owners. It can get cumbersome. Think about this. You own property with your child, and then your child maybe gets a divorce and has to split half of everything he has.
Yes.
Well, that could be one of the things he has, depending on whether it's considered separate or marital property. And, now you got somebody else in charge. Now you own the property half with somebody else, maybe, or another partial owner. It's an asset to you. You can sell that your half. You can, you can not sell it. It's a strange concept when you own undivided interest because if it's just two people, like let's say you and me own a piece of property, 1/2 undivided interest. What it really means is we both have equal right of entry and equal right of possession.
Yes.
And what that means is I can go in and use 100% of that property for whatever I want. You can go onto that property and use it for 100% of it for what you want. There's no line down the middle that says
That's
this
correct.
is yours and this is mine. And the problem is if your use of it is inconsistent with mine, it's going to be an issue. You want to farm it, and I want to build an amusement park.
Yeah.
Okay. Then they can't coexist, right? So
That's right.
Well, maybe you can get creative and figure out a way to do that, but you
Yes.
get my point. And now we have a difficult issue because we can't do what we want to do with it. So we both have this half undivided interest. We both have 100% use of it. But if it ever sold, we'd each get half the money.
Right.
So that, and if you want, I mean, it's a way to own. Sometimes it's an okay way to own. Sometimes it's a little bit cumbersome.
Sure.
So it just depends. But I wanted to clear that up between just being a co-owner or right of survivorship. Now, again, if you're a spouse, it's right of survivorship by default. If you want right of survivorship with a non-spouse, you can get it. You just have to draft a deed to say it.
What would be, and I'm going to ask this, and I'm sure you'll be able to answer this.
I hope so.
What would be the advantage, or why would someone want to give that to a non-spouse? Give right of survivorship. Let's say if me and you bought a piece of property together, and we wanted right of survivorship in there. That doesn't seem to make sense to me to do that.
No, but it wouldn't make sense if you did it with a child.
With a child, yes.
Because it would just go at death.
Yes. Okay.
And no probate, no redeeding it or anything. It would just invest with the survivor. And that's typically what it is. Now, I have seen situations where, lawsuits and property is distributed like brothers and sisters and stuff like, that sort of thing. And that might be an opportunity. Usually family members would be the only advantage to that. I can't imagine two parties that are, not family, but
right.
But
kind of business partners.
I mean, unless it was something. I mean, everybody's different, so I don't know the circumstances. So if you were a business partner and your goal was, if something happens to me, I want my partner to just have it, then that would fit. I mean, the point is you can do it. If that fits, it's worth it. You can do it. Now, in this situation, the person that asked the question, that's what they wanted to have happen. So, and again, fortunately, they were there.
To one of their children.
There is a solution. It's not like you write this deed and it's not the way you want it. Now you're stuck with it forever.
Right.
Now, you can write as many deeds as you want.
Do another one.
That's exactly right. Now, the only drawback now is when, let me just say this for completeness. Now, when she deeded it and added her child, okay, she's the only one that has to do that because as deeding it, she's the only owner.
Yes.
Now, if she wants to deed it again with right of survivorship, now she has two owners.
Okay.
They both have to deed to do that. Now, I don't think there would be an objection to that because what they were trying to do in the first place, it would give them that. So I'm sure they would. But, if you're an owner, you're partially in charge, right?
Yes.
Sometimes I get folks that say, I put my son on my bank account.
Yes.
But he's kind of going off the rails a little bit. Now, so I'm going to go in the bank and take him off. I said, well, you're not going to take him off without his permission. He goes, well, I put him on there. I said, yeah, but when you put him on here, you made him an owner.
That's right.
Now that he's an owner, it takes the owners to take an owner off.
Just went through that. I had a checking account that we changed up, and I added my wife to that account. And
did she go off the rails?
No. But since she signed up with me on that account, I can't just automatically take her off.
That's right.
So, but I wanted her on that.
I mean,
account, so.
if you want to take her off, she has to consent. Is what I'm saying.
Right.
If there's a reason to do it, she probably would. But if you got somebody that goes rogue, now you got a problem.
While we're talking about deeds and ownership in that arena, I had a question came up to me yesterday.
Great.
And had to do with this, and we were talking about title. And normally we think about having title. It's like with a vehicle or a trailer or maybe a mobile home, something like that. But is title to a property is that kind of interchangeable with the deed?
The title ownership.
The deed is the title.
Title ownership of real property is the deed.
That's what I thought.
All ownership vests in that deed.
So there was a clause in a contract that I was using, and it referred to title, and then it went on to talk about how the deed would be, and it confused my client, saying, "Why does this say title?" And I said, "Well, because the deed to the property is the title."
Title's like a bigger category, where deed is like a subcategory. Title is the ownership.
Yes.
And you can own things several ways. You can have title ownership, which actually have documentation for it, which would be a deed, vehicles, some other stuff that has title ownership. There's other ownership that doesn't have. You don't have the title ownership, but we still have ownership.
Right.
We talked about that personal property ownership by possession.
Right.
But yeah, you're exactly right. So when you're talking about real property, land.
Yes.
It's a deed is where the ownership resides. And I have often heard discussions. People say, "Well, Daddy said that piece of property goes to me, and he promised it to me, and everybody knows it goes to me." And I'd say, "Whose name is the property in?" He'd say, "My dad or somebody else." I said, "Well, then you don't have it." I don't want to be the bearer of bad news, but if you're not on the deed, you do not have the indicia of ownership.
Well, real property, real estate, vehicles, things like that are things that require documented ownership.
That's right. I mean, I'm not sure who decided all that. I mean, deeds go back way back to our common law, right? You know,
Yes.
but still, they are, they're specific, and that is what where the ownership resides.
Yeah.
In that document.
Interesting.
Which is why it's a good idea to record a deed. Now, it'd probably surprise you to know that you don't have to record a deed.
You do not.
There's no legal requirement to go to the Register of Deeds and record it. And so let's think about that. I mean, that may fit what you want to do. I'm not saying you should. I'm saying it's probably a good idea. But let's just say you and I are sitting here and you hire me to draft a deed. And
We're going to go off a rabbit hole here, but
well, I'm just saying.
For me,
I
anyway.
get you. But I mean, okay, well, somebody signs a deed over to me. I'll use me for
Yes.
example. Somebody signs a deed over to me. I buy a piece of property, gives me
Yes.
I give him the money, signs the deed to me, and I've got the original document in my hand.
yes.
At that moment, that is the only indicia of my ownership. That is the only thing that shows I own that piece of property.
That's
So
correct.
if I go home, put it in my safe, and never record it, I darn sure better not lose that document, because if I do, I cannot prove I own it.
That's correct.
I could probably do this collateral system of proof where I get the guy in that sold it to me, testify that, yeah, he gave me the money. But basically, you got a problem. So, but if you record it, now it's in the public record. And if you lose your deed, the original deed,
Yes.
you still are in the record. So, and another thing is if you have a deed and you don't record it, somebody could that guy you bought it from
Yes.
could actually sell it again.
Yes.
And now here's the problem with that. If he sold it to another, what we call a bona fide purchaser for value,
Yes.
if he sold it to another person, that person is acting under color of title. They don't have any clue or any inquiry notice that it's been sold.
I can tell you some example. I've actually run across this.
And I would be out, then if I came, wait a minute, I bought that before. Well, the courts would uphold the secondary title.
Yeah.
And I would be out. I have a remedy to get my money back, but not
Yes.
the land.
Yeah.
And so if you run into it, it's a unique situation.
Yeah, a piece of property I had someone ask me to investigate. They wanted to try to buy it. So I looked up the records, found out who was on it according to the court records. So I contacted this person. He said, I don't own it anymore. I sold it.
Yep.
But there was no record of it, no recording of it, no nothing. And as far as the courthouse records were concerned, he was still the owner. But that doesn't mean there doesn't exist a deed somewhere. There's a deed somewhere that's not recorded on that property.
I did it myself. I had a piece of property. I didn't record the deed for 20 years. Then at that point in time, circumstances changed, and I thought it'd be, for protection, it would be a good idea to record it. So,
Yeah.
so I did. But again, you don't have to. And there's something else. This may be a little bit off track, but since it's that kind of a show where we just talk about
Yeah.
stuff, I won't spend time on this, but maybe something for further discussion later. I'm dealing with the closing of a piece of property, and I often have wondered about this because I looked it up in the law and I can't find it. I know it's not there, but in real estate, if somebody passes a piece of property, and they do so with their power of attorney for their principal, so the agent passes it for the principal. So
Yes.
you got dad; his dementia's too far along. He's not of sound mind. He's deemed to be incapacitated, and so the son is the power of attorney, and they want to sell the property. Well, the deed says at the bottom, Dad buying through his power of attorney, so and so. Okay.
Yes.
Now, every title insurance company out there, and some lawyers as well, will tell you that power of attorney has to be recorded if it's being passed under the power of attorney. Okay.
Okay.
He said it has to be recorded in the public record. I have looked, so I throw that challenge out there. If you can show me, I'm pretty open-minded, so if you can show me, I'll listen, where it says you have to do that. And I say that because I've looked and it's not there. It is not there. It is so widely accepted that you won't get through the closing process without doing it.
Yes.
But there's no requirement to do it. So it begs the question, why is it we have a system of rules that require something that's not legally required?
Well, what about, let me try to give you a scenario, maybe an answer. Title companies and attorneys who do that type of work and close these properties, the property owner is always offered title insurance. Mm-hmm. And the title insurance companies, the underwriters for that, are going to require it.
They do. That's exactly what I'm getting at.
They're going to require it.
And they're required so they can, and of course, they don't want to get sued. They want
That's
liability. They want to be able to show that
Right.
that person had the authority.
Yes.
And the authority to do that actually resides in that power of attorney document.
Yeah.
Again, sometimes title insurance companies and I rub each other a little wrong.
Yeah, it's not. It may not be a matter of law, but it's a matter of protection for the company.
It can
and
be
protection for the buyer.
It can be, and what happens is they just say, "Well, we're not going to insure it." Then you can nix the deal. You
can fly off without the insurance, I guess.
But it's interesting. There's like speaking of a power of attorney, if you have a power of attorney, it just needs to be signed. I've looked long and hard some time ago here in Tennessee. It doesn't have to be notarized. It doesn't have to be witnessed. Now, I've seen some attorneys' websites that say you have to sign your power of attorney before a notary.
Really?
You do not have to. Now, in my opinion, I take a little different approach to this. I think just signing it is a little loosey-goosey in my mind, okay?
Yeah.
So even though it's not necessary, I will have mine at least notarized. Usually when it's part of a trust plan, we have the witnesses there. And
I was going to say, it does have to be. Does the power of attorney have to be witnessed?
No, just signature.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
It doesn't have to be neither. It has neither. Now,
Interesting.
people are probably thinking, oh, wait a minute. Now, the healthcare power of attorney, the advanced care directive, has to be one or the other. And there's a little box at the top of it that says it either has to be notarized or witnessed. And it goes on to say what kind of witnesses it has to be. They have to be uninterested, independent, uninterested and stuff. Yeah. That's the power of attorney for healthcare. But I'm talking about the power of attorney for everything else, or the durable general, or sometimes called the financial power of attorney. Which, anyway, so I think it's a little loosey-goosey. And I know that if somebody walked into a bank with a power of attorney that was just signed, they would probably balk at it because they're so used to seeing some more dignity to the document, either witnessing or notary. So we notarize it. I've got notaries in the office, and it's easy enough to do. It doesn't have to be done, but it makes things smoother.
Yeah.
So, I kind of pick my battles, what I mean? The same thing with the recording of the power of attorney.
Sure. I think most people would assume, not knowing, that it should be notarized.
I mean, I could argue it, but pick your battles, right? No big deal to go record it. So, and I don't want to screw up somebody's real estate deal. I don't want the title insurance company to say, well, we're not going to insure the title, and then it not go through. So it's just, I being an engineer for so many years, I'm just a stickler for rules and dotting I's and crossing T's, and it just surprises me how some of that stuff works. But anyway, don't want to go, like I said, don't want to go down that rabbit hole. So
yes, yeah.
Anyway, I was talking about the seminar yesterday, and it was great people. It was a private one, and we do those from time to time. But just to let you know, the next one I have coming up is this month. I guess I call it a public one, or where anybody can come.
Oh, yeah.
And that's on the 16th of this month, March 16th. And that's a Saturday. It's going to be over at the Star Theater. And if you've ever been to the Star Theater, we have just done a bunch of revocations, okay? And we've a dumpster has been outside my office for about 3 weeks. Yeah. And it's gone now. But, we just kind of gutted a lot of stuff, all new lighting. Yeah. The sconces on. Anyway, and, we had a stage. Our floor was flat, and we had a stage, the elevated stage. And so we kind of tore the stage out and made it low. It's only 4 inches tall. And then we elevated the audience, So,
oh, really?
Yeah, it's a lot of big change. So when we have our seminar on the 16th, I'm not sure because the platforms that elevate the audience they're quasi-mobile. You can tear them down, but I don't know if they'll be up or down. But whatever it is, it's a whole new look in there. It looks real nice.
Very good.
We managed to secure some grant money to do just that very stuff. And
I've been to 1 or 2 shows, but it's been several years ago.
Well, it'll look completely different. So, but anyway, that's where that one is on the March the 16th, and it's a Saturday one, so it'll be at 10 o'clock in the morning. Yes. We call it Will's Trust in the Nursing Home, and it's that's what we talk about. So if you want to come to that, call my office at 931-363-7222 and get on the RSVP list. One of the girls there, Alex, Courtney, or Tammy, will be more than happy to get you on that. The list the RSVP is pretty informal, just like to know who's coming.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we that's coming up, and I don't know when the next one is, but I think I mentioned before that the ones we do we're scaling back a little bit, just simply because. Sure. It's a big scheduling issue, and when we go to other counties and stuff, it's a big deal. And Saturdays, so I don't know what the schedule looks like for the rest of the year. I think they've already mapped it out, but I think it's on my website. So if you go to estateplanstand.com, you can take a look and see where the next one is and when it's going to be.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, good deal.
So what do we want to talk about now?
Well, of course, I can talk about real estate all day, but we're not here to talk about that so much. But it does involve it usually.
The family farm, the house, is always part of estate planning. Always.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And of course, we've talked about this maybe a little bit before the real estate portion of things, but your estate involves more than just your real estate.
Oh yeah.
There's a lot more to people's estates than that, and they're all their personal belongings, checking, their banking accounts,
You got your stuff.
possessions, your stuff, all your stuff, and if you don't plan what's going to happen, somebody else will.
Well, I often say if there's all these decisions you might, if you want to sit down and worry and think about it, you think to yourself, well, who's going to take care of my family if something happens to me?
Yeah. Oh,
And if
yeah.
you have minor children like you're thinking, hey, who's going to take care of these kids?
Exactly, those things got to be addressed.
Who's going to take care of that? And then you might think, okay, I got all this stuff. I got land, I got real property, I got money in the bank, and I got stuff. I mean, you come to my house, it's polluted with it. It's everywhere. I mean, I'm not a hoarder, but you know what I mean.
Yeah,
If you had-
everybody has
If I had to
stuff.
pack that stuff up in boxes, it'd be like a daunting task. But your stuff. You think, what's going to happen to my stuff if something happens to me? Where's it going to go? I mean, I wanted to kind of go to my wife and kids because my kids are still minors and they need the wherewithal to
Yes.
live and stuff. But so what's going to happen? What's going to happen to me if? What about an incapacity? If something happens to me and I'm still alive but can't make decisions,
Yes.
does anybody know what my quality of life is going to be? First of all, do people know and understand what I consider an acceptable quality of life or an unacceptable quality of life? And if they do, who's going to take care of me for that? So
Right.
Now those are questions that need to be answered. Now the problem is they're going to be answered whether you answer them or not. The question is who's going to answer them. Is it going to be you while you're of sound mind and a calm thought? What I mean?
Right.
And you can pick the people you want taking care of you, or you can say where your stuff goes, or you can
Right.
plan for your wife and kids. Or is it going to be somebody, across down at the square in the courthouse that doesn't know you, doesn't know your morals, doesn't know your values, and they just are picked for you? And that's the difference between the two. So I think the former is infinitely more preferable. I mean, there's no
Absolutely.
reason why. Since we got the opportunity to do this and pick it, then we ought to take advantage of it. And that's what the planning thing is all about. So, yeah, it's kind of a bummer. If you don't make the decisions, someone makes them for you. I can say it's probably almost a 100% chance it won't turn out the way you want it.
No, not at all. And you have the opportunity while you're living, healthy, younger, whatever, to give some thought to this. And if you haven't, I would recommend someone like you, and you in particular, to talk to, who can guide you through all the questions that you need to ask. Because sometimes you don't even know what to ask.
That's right. Well, or people have the what if in their mind.
Yes.
But they just don't know the options that would solve it
Yeah.
or work around it. Yeah.
I mean, honestly, you may not even think about, who's going to take care of the children, or whatever, like that. And of course, Teresa and I have had to deal with that. We have made some preparations. We've done all those kind of things. We do have wills and trust in place, but we've had to deal recently with her father, so that's kind of an ongoing issue. She has power of attorney, and we have, what do you call the health, the directive?
It's the Tennessee Advanced Care Directive.
We've got all that in place and have had for a while. So, but the comfort that came with doing that, even though it was kind of a struggle and a strain to get there and make it happen, it's like, well, once it's done, you kind of have this sense of relief. Okay, we've got that settled. We've got that off of us. There's not a question mark. And that's the kind of thing that I think you can offer. And if you haven't talked to Stan, or maybe you just keep putting it off, it's one of those things that you need to make the phone call and set up the appointment and go through the process.
And, people often report back to me that they just feel like a tremendous weight is lifted once they get this done.
Absolutely.
Because the people that do it have been thinking about it for a while.
Yeah.
And then something may happen, like in the community or to someone else, and it amplifies that thought process.
Yes.
And when they finally get around to doing it, they just feel relieved. They're just relieved.
Yes.
I actually had a client who unfortunately had to exercise that. I mean, we had done a plan for him, I think somewhere in a year or two after doing that.
Yeah.
There was a terrible accident, and the husband was hospitalized, and
Oh, wow.
it was pretty bad. It was in a coma and not expected to come out of it. And a couple of days, within a couple of days, she remembered and realized that he did not want to, in his advanced care directive, he had designated the kind of quality of life he wanted.
Yeah.
And where he was not that. He was not there. And so she, just did instructed them that, follow his advanced care directive. And they did. And she felt very relieved of that. She felt relieved that she had that done and the power for her to, make sure it got taken care of. And she felt that's what he wanted. she felt like she did a good thing for him, and that's a tough call for people.
Well, I've had to deal with estates, as you know, in the auction business, in the real estate business, had to deal with them. And I've seen where, and I'll give you a present day example, and I don't think he'd mind me talking about this at all. A good friend of mine recently passed, and it was sudden. Wasn't expecting it at all. But he had prepared everything. He had everything spelled out he wanted done, right even to the point of me doing the sale to sell all his stuff. I mean, it was just laid out. Everybody knew what to do. He knew, and everybody knew their role, and it was spelled out. And even though it's a very sad thing for me, at least I know everybody's doing what he wanted done.
Yeah, and it probably went pretty smooth.
It's so far.
Yeah,
we're in the middle of it. The sale is on the 16th.
Okay, well, and that's kudos to him for doing that because, and again, you don't know. When we're in our 30s and 40s, right? We're gonna live forever, right? I mean,
right. You don't know.
I remember back there, back then. I'm not gonna mess with any of this stuff. I'm gonna be around for a while. Yeah. I have plenty of time to deal with that. And you saying this happened and it was totally unexpected.
Yes.
I mean, I don't know if it was a sickness but that can happen unexpected and that can happen rapidly. Certainly, accidents can happen in a blink of an eye. Yeah. So it really is a real possibility that something could happen to you. Yeah. And if you don't think about that, I mean, you're sort of, you got it, and you don't do this. If you say I need to do some of this planning, you really don't do a whole lot of it for yourself. I mean, you do it for the people you care about.
That's
because
right.
It's them that you're relieving of all this burden.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if it goes smooth, it's for them that it goes smooth. Think about this. Suppose you don't do anything. I think about this sometimes.
Yes.
And if something happened to me, and I didn't have anything planned, and it all fell on my wife, I mean, I think she'd be pretty ticked at me. I know we're talking about after death, right? Now,
yes.
Wherever I am after death, I know where I want to be, but wherever I am, I don't know that I can handle the thought that she's mad at me because I didn't get all this stuff taken care of ahead of time.
Well, on top of probably being devastated, because of the life change and the impact of losing a loved one, then you burden them also with having to make all these decisions, and they don't, and they're at the height of their emotion. Yeah. And it's a tough thing.
Boy, if that don't hit the nail on the head, that really is when you involve the grief and just the emotional part of it.
Exactly.
It is a recipe for having a real bad taste in your mouth.
I was thinking about this too. You're talking about the age to do this. The age to do something like this. Well. And you think, well, I need to do that when I'm older because I'm not ready. We're not ready to make those kind of decisions. Well, here's the thing about doing that. You don't know how long your life is. Nobody does. Okay? And if you do this now, even in your 30s and 40s or whatever, 10 years from now, when you're 50 or 60, you can always, if something's different and you need to change something, you can change it.
That's exactly right. I mean, it's a living, breathing document, and as circumstances change for the better or for the worse, you can modify it to do that. Right. You're exactly right. So there's no real downside to having it. You can modify it. Once you do it, it's not cast in concrete. You're stuck with it. Things change, so can that.
But you would address where your circumstance is now, and if something happened to you now, this is what needs to take place. 10 years now, 20 years from now, maybe circumstances have changed, and you can adjust it.
Yeah. You're talking about how long are we going to live? If you're scripturally oriented like I am, you're told you have 72 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
If you get 72 years, if you follow the health laws and take care of yourself and that sort of thing, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, if you don't follow the health laws and you eat the things you're not supposed to eat, or you
be careful now. I'm sitting across from you.
but you know what you know what I'm saying. If you don't take care of yourself, then maybe it's not a guaranteed.
Yeah.
It's not guaranteed.
Absolutely.
And if you are good at that, maybe some other things, and for some reason they want to bless you, you can have more than that. But I mean, you sort of start from that premise, okay? And hopefully, if you get anything over that, that's all gravy. You just be real thankful and just.
I was in the truck with Daniel, my son, some this week, and I've decided to start with Genesis and begin. And of course, in the truck I can make us listen to it, and he enjoys listening to it actually. So I have an Alexander Scorby version of the scriptures.
Gotcha.
And he reads. So we're listening to Genesis, and of course, there's all those guys that live to be in their 6, 7, 8, and 900 years.
Yep.
And so that was fascinating to have that discussion with Daniel about how old those guys were.
Yep, yep.
So we had a good discussion about that, but we're not guaranteed that anymore.
No. Can your body last that long? Apparently so.
It did then.
It did.
It did then. That was pre-flood.
Yep.
So a little different.
That proclamation that I talked about came down later.
Yes,
That's right,
it
that's
did
right.
come later.
But that is interesting. Well, yeah, I mean it's great that you expose the child to that stuff, and it is interesting. I'll tell you what's even more interesting.
Yes.
If you get, and again we're getting off topic.
We're off topic, I know.
But that's okay. If you ever want to like Bible study, which
Yes.
I'm a big fan of Bible study, I love to do it.
Yeah.
If you're ever going to study the Book of Genesis, you will have a blast. Or I mean, it's be very enlightening if you also at the exact same time study the Book of Revelation, because you would be surprised
Yes.
at the similarities between those two books.
Yeah.
Everybody struggles with Revelations because it's the end.
Yeah.
Genesis is the beginning.
Yep.
Study them side by side.
Yeah.
And I think it would be
Interesting.
very enlightening. I've done that on a couple of occasions, and it just never amazes me.
Yeah. Well, there's nothing in everything that's referred to in Revelation is somewhere else in the Scriptures.
Mm-hmm. Well, everything in the Scriptures is somewhere else in the Scriptures.
That's right.
And this is the last thing I'll say. This is one of the things you probably shouldn't talk about. But when you study Scriptures, and you talk, let's say you're talking about something in the
Yes.
end, in the end times.
Yeah.
Well, you don't go to the library and get a book about some guy that wrote a book on the end times. I mean, what the heck do they know?
Yes.
I mean, any knowledge they have, they gain from Scriptures. I mean, when you
Yes.
look at your King James version, that's what that middle column is all about.
Right.
When you want to it refers a concept that you're reading about where else it is in Scripture.
Yeah. Where else?
If the word is the truth, and it relies on itself,
Yes.
and that's the best way to study it.
Yeah.
I find man has very little to say that's accurate about the end times. I don't care.
Yeah.
I don't care who you are. You don't have the inside line of what's going to happen, right? I mean, you only know what you're told.
Yeah. I only know what's been revealed.
That's
it.
right. That's right.
That's right.
Anyway, we don't want to get down that rabbit hole, but
One more thing
Go ahead.
about that. The hundreds of years ago, when God told Adam and Eve not to eat of the tree, and in the day they eat, they would surely die. Well, they lived hundreds of years, or Adam did.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've had the question. But here's the thing. The Scripture also says that a day is as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years as a day.
That's right.
And he didn't live 1,000 years.
in 2 Timothy, that statement is that.
He didn't live 1,000 years, so it was the day.
Well, and also what was the promise? You shall surely die.
That's right.
There's no reference to time,
That's right.
right? It's just the fact that it would happen, right?
That's right. And it did.
Now, which could beg the question: were they intended to be immortal at that time?
It does beg the question.
does, yeah.
That's speculative. That's beyond my
Hey, I love
pay grade.
I love scriptural studies, so let's not go there.
I know.
Or at least not now. We'll do it some other
We'll
time.
do it another time.
Yeah. 'Cause
Anyway.
I think you mentioned you actually had a group that did that.
We
which is
do.
pretty
We
cool.
do. Stan Pierchoski, I got a message from one of my friends just a few minutes ago from our Bible study. But anyway, Stan Pierchoski, everybody, Pierchoski Law in Pulaski, Tennessee, on the square over there in Pulaski. And if you're familiar with Pulaski, which a lot of us are, it's next door there to the Star Theater right there, and also close to the Outlook.
Right on the square.
Yeah, right on the square. And a great place over there. And of course, the Star Theater you just mentioned has renovated. What's their next show? Do you know?
Actually, it begins tonight.
Oh, really?
Yes, and it's called The Children of the Holocaust. And Can You Hear Them Cry?
Oh my gosh. Okay.
So it's about. I mean, it's about a time in history that's not pleasant.
So this is a drama.
It is, and it's actually a lot of young people doing it because it's about the children of the Holocaust.
Okay.
And I think they have some. Last time we did it, we actually had somebody come and speak that was actually a liberator. He was
Okay.
a pretty advanced years, but but I don't know that they have that this time or not. But we did it once before, and it's a very somber play. I mean, it's about, like I said, it's about hard times in our history that are unpleasant.
Yes.
But you have to embrace stuff like that. You have to embrace our legacy, and you just can't ignore history.
No.
And it's about that. So that's what it's about, and it's moving. It's moving.
So it
it's
starts
not-
tonight.
It does, and I think it's only. You know what? I I'm trying to think if it's tonight and tomorrow night or tonight and next.
I bet they have a Facebook page.
Oh yeah, startheater.org or Star Theater Facebook page. Yeah, you can find it. You can find
the
it.
Star Theater.
But I know the first one's tonight. I can't remember if the second one's tomorrow night or if it's going to be next weekend. But I think it's probably these 2 nights, Friday and Saturday.
You know, these community theaters, we have one here, there's there. I think those are just so much fun to go look and see. It's so entertaining. It's just see, and it's good local, wholesome stuff.
And of course, since it's about the children of the Holocaust,
Yes.
there's a couple actors in there that have just really blossomed as people on stage. There's a couple in there. I mean, one of the girls that's in there is we call one of our star kids. You know, she was. I remember her being in a couple plays ago. You know, and she was in this, and then she was in something else with a little bit of a bigger role.
Yeah.
And then not too long ago, she was in the lead on one of the Disney plays that we did and stuff like that. And she just has really blossomed. A very, very good actor, very convincing and stuff like that. She's in there. And I mean, they're all good. They're all good. They're all like that.
Yeah.
And they do. They just get better and better if they stick with it. You know, and they love doing it. And this one, you know, they have an opportunity to represent. You know, it's hard to do a play about real times.
Yeah.
And it's hard to make a play about real times interesting. Because let's face it, basic life is kind of a bore. But, you know, this, you know, like I said, this is, and I don't know how much they teach about stuff like the Holocaust anymore. Everybody just wants to look the other way. And it's a terrible time, but it's part of our history. It should at least be, we should at least know about it.
Yeah.
And why, what's the advantage in, and this is like when we talk about planning, what's the advantage in knowing about difficult times that have passed? Well, my position is this: if you need to know about it so you can prevent reoccurrence. Right?
Absolutely.
I mean, you can't fix it.
No.
And people say, "Well, no sense talking about the past. You can't change anything." That's right, you can't, but you can learn from it.
Yeah.
And you can, if it's something that you don't want to happen again, then you understand it to the extent of what happened. I'm not pointing the blame finger. That doesn't get us anywhere. But what happened, and let's prevent the reoccurrence of it, stuff like that. So that's my take on it. But it ought to be a pretty good show. It's at 7:00. I think you can still get tickets. You go to www.startheater.org, and you get the tickets right online.
That's good.
Yeah, it'd be
Very
worth
good.
going.
Well, I hope they have a big success with it. I do.
Yeah,
it's 8:48, and Stan Pierchoski's here. By the way, the phone number here, if you'd like to talk with us, 766-9393. If you have questions regarding estates, estate plans, wills, and trust, those kind of things, Stan is an expert in that field.
I don't know if I'm allowed to say that, but I didn't.
I can say it. Based on my conversations, I consider you an expert. How about that?
I consider myself knowledgeable.
Yes.
Well,
You have focused on this area of law.
That's exactly right.
Yes.
Speaking of which, just to relay, I always like to relay some success stories. And in this last week, we actually had 2 10-care approvals come through.
Oh, really? Okay.
And one of them was pretty much expected. And one of them was the kind of one that was been hanging out there for a while, and we were not concerned, but it was a little off the beaten path.
Sure.
In other words, might as well talk about that in the time we have left. When we do this long-term care planning or get people qualified for the 10-care benefits,
right?
When we talk about 10-care and going to the long-term care, 10-care going to the nursing home, we are always talking about people who are 65 years or older. That's the long-term care Medicaid, which is you got to be 65. One of the criteria, some of the very, very fundamental criteria is you got to be 65 years or older. Yeah. You have to be a Tennessee resident, stuff like that. Yeah. Well, this was a case where they were less than 65 years old. Now, that is available. There's a 10-care will pay for your nursing home bill. It's available if you're under 65. It is just an eligibility criteria, like the amount of income you have and the amount of assets you have, all those criteria are identical. Yeah. But there's an additional hoop you have to jump through, because under 65, 10-care considers themselves the payer of last resort. Okay. Meaning, we'll pay if nobody else is going to pay. Okay. And so what that means is, if you're under 65, we have to apply for disability. Because the theory is if you're under 65 and you need long-term care, there's got to be a disability there. If you don't have a disability, I'm not sure what the reason could be. Okay. You see what you know what I mean?
I'm not sure I'm following you.
Well, I mean, I don't know if I can come up with an example of being under 65 and needing long-term care and not having a disability.
Yes, I understand.
But you have to. You don't have to have your disability. So when we talk about disability, we talk about either SSI or SSDI, or at least when we're talking about a documented disability. Okay. Yes. So You don't have to have it in place to apply. You have to at least check the box that you applied for it. Because if you apply for that today, it's going to be like 2 years or more till they say yes.
Interesting. Didn't know that.
I don't do much of that Social Security.
I did not know that.
Disability, but I know this much. I know they deny you the first 2 times, 3 times. I don't know. I think they want to make, and then they say yes. It's like they want to make sure you. I don't know why it takes that, but we deal with it to the extent of just knowing it has to be done. And so this one was a case where when the person came to us, they didn't quite have the disability yet. We started that about a year or so ago, and then it went through, and now we got the when it was time for us to apply, the disability was already in place, and they approved it. And it was kind of, like I say, it's a little different than what we do with regularly because there's that extra hoop to jump through.
Yeah.
But you can get it. You can do it.
Wow.
So
That's interesting. I had no idea it took that long.
well, that's not the TennCare part. That's the disability part.
Yeah, the disability
Well,
part.
and not like I said, I'm not the go-to person for this.
Yeah.
I don't do it. I never did it. The eligibility for it. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't do it. I've never done it. I've always referred it to people. Now, I do know that if you apply for something like SSI or SSDI and you get denied, which is usually coming out of the gates, usually you do. And I won't say always, but my understanding is it's very common to get denied. So you want to stick with it and go and appeal it. Now, the beauty of doing that is if you appeal it, there are attorneys. Now, I have one I refer to. I don't know anybody local, so if you're local and you want to talk to me about being a referral, I mean, I don't get that many, but I get some.
Yeah.
But I don't, I know somebody that used to do it, but they're not around anymore. But there's somebody that's here in Tennessee. If you want to appeal a disability decision, all you got to do is call this guy and hire him, and you don't have to pay him. He'll do the appeal, and he will be paid by the Social Security Administration for that appeal.
I had no idea
You're
about
not
that.
You're not out $1 on the appeal.
That's interesting.
It is interesting.
That is very interesting.
So there's no downside to it. And
Yes.
so, and usually those folks will guarantee approval. They just don't quite guarantee the win. And so you can do it. And
Now, wait a
I
minute.
think
What did you say? Guarantee the approval,
you guarantee approval, but not when it's going to be approved.
but not when. Okay.
Because I have heard people being denied 3 times, and then they just say yes, you're approved. I mean, I don't do it enough to understand that process, but that is not uncommon to be denied.
Interesting.
So, I mean, if anybody wants to share that fact that they applied for it, I think it's rare you get it right out of the bat. Now, maybe depending on the disability. Maybe if the disability was so apparent and so disabling,
Yes.
you might get it right out of the gate. I don't know, but I think it's very common that it's denied at least
Seems
once.
to be the
once.
first order of business is to always deny. Then interesting.
And I don't get that. I don't think it's a good approach for the government to do things that way. But
No.
they don't listen to me.
But they should.
They should. That's right. I offer it, but they don't even take it under advisement. So. But anyway, we got those approvals in, and that's always a good day to let the family know that hey, we go through this process. When we're trying to get the application in, I call it hurry up, and it's called a hurry up and wait process. So we're trying to get the application in. We're private paying. We're trying to minimize that. So we're gathering documents. We're gathering bank records. We're looking through everything to see if there were any gifts made over the last 5 years. We're going through all this stuff.
Wow.
Then we file the application. And when we sign the application and fax it in, I always tell the person, remember I told you it was going to be hurry up and wait?
Yes.
This has been the hurry. Now comes the wait. Because now we've filed the application. Now we don't do anything. And probably somewhere about a month later, it'll be picked up by somebody and get assigned to caseworker and a person ID and the stuff that they do.
Yeah.
Then they'll start looking at it. Then they'll eventually ask a question and typically they'll say, okay, I noticed the bank records you sent in. Let's say we applied this thing in January 1st. They say, I noticed the bank records you sent in had up to December last year. I'm just now looking at it and it's March. Can you please send me updated bank records for January and February, right? That's a very common request,
Yes.
stuff like that. Also, if it's toward the front of the year, they'll say, how about sending me if we hadn't already sent it, if it had changed, they'll want the new award letter for Social Security of what your new income is, because every January it changes, right? It goes up a little bit.
Yeah.
If you get Social Security. There's stuff like that. And sometimes they'll ask odd questions of something they found and they don't understand. Like maybe they're looking through your bank records and they see a check written for $5,000 and they can't figure out where it went.
Yeah.
They have no shyness about saying, where'd that $5,000 check go? because
Yeah.
they're the presumption to them is you gave money away.
Yes. Yeah.
But if we can show that no, we had the driveway paved, or no, we had roof repaired, or no, we had
Right.
whatever we paid for.
Yeah.
You know, if it was a compensated transfer and we paid and got something for it, it's okay. Then it's not.
Yeah.
But they don't know, and so they ask. They ask,
right.
and we have to respond to that. So,
Yep.
and that takes 2 to 3 months. Sometimes I've had them go as long as 7 months to get an approval. And those are ones where they're scratching and sniffing it a lot. They're confused about something. I try to explain it to them, and they don't want to take my word for it. So they go to their own legal department, and eventually they agree with me because it's under the rules, right? You know, so
Right.
you can only come to one answer. And so, then they finally approve. But it does take some time. It does take some time. And
Interesting. Well, you've done it many, many times.
Yeah,
You've done it many, many times. And you mentioned this before that I guess, have you become somewhat known among some of the processors?
well, you know, hard to get the same one twice.
Oh, really?
But from the legal department, I would say yes.
Okay.
And some of the caseworkers, yes.
Yeah.
You know,
Okay.
and it's kind of job when you're a 10-care caseworker. I think it's a job that has a lot of attrition.
Yeah.
And since COVID, it's been different.
Yeah.
You know, COVID, I guess, going to leave
Everything
its
seems-
mark on everything. But
Everything seems a little different since COVID.
but
It does.
but I think certainly with the facilities that people are in, you know, I think when I'm the one doing it, I think they have a warm fuzzy feeling that the person's going to get eligible.
yeah.
I mean, I haven't failed to get anybody eligible yet.
Well, because you know the rules.
Now, sometimes it's been a tougher road to hoe, but got there. Eligibility we've always attained, you know.
That's good.
So, especially and the biggest problems we have is sometimes with what I call a do-it-yourself application. A lot of people will file the application themselves, and I'm not saying you can't do that. You can, but there's a lot of rules to the game here, and they get denied. And then it's like, okay. Then they bring it to me and say, can you kind of fix what happened? Well, that's tougher to do. Sometimes we can't recover from things. I mean, that's sad news, but we can get eligible, but we can't recover from the reason they denied us sometimes. And so we
Yes.
have to back out, change whatever we had to change, reapply. And the biggest drawback to that is we've lost that time.
Yeah.
Because when you file the application, see if I can work this in the next two.
Yeah.
When you file the application, you become 10-care applications pending status.
Yeah.
And so you're not paying the nursing home, you're just paying your income, or what's called a patient liability.
Mm-hmm.
And 3 months later, and you're not paying, you have to be treated as if you're already approved.
Yeah.
So 3 months later, if they say, okay, you're denied because you were over-resourced, well, all bets are off now. Now the nursing home one's going to get paid from the day you filed the application till the day that denial was, and they're entitled to be paid because you're not pending the status anymore. If you'd have been approved, they would come back to the day you filed and pay the nursing home for all those 3 months. So
Which
now
begs the question: when you have to redo it, do they go back and pay from the original date?
No.
So that has to be has to be
Yeah,
private.
so that's kind of where
Wow.
we lose some funds because of that.
Wow.
And I can't fix that. If you're over-resourced, I just can't fix that. So we don't send the application in until you're 200% eligible. I mean, it's pointless to do it until you're that way.
Right.
So, anyway,
Right. Stan Pierchoski, everybody, we're running out of time.
We
are. Give that phone number again.
phone number 931-363-7222. That's Pierchoski Estate Law, Pierchoski Elder Law. Got my seminar coming up Saturday the 16th of March at the Star Theater on the Square in Pulaski, 10 o'clock in the morning. Call that number to get RSVP'd. Go to my website, estateplanstan.com. I got a calendar. You get my phone number you can call. You get my email. You can send a question that way.
That's right.
You can read some stuff that's on there. It's a pretty cool website for.
Always a pleasure, my friend. And don't forget the Star Theater's program tonight. Yeah, that's
Children of the
happening
Holocaust. Can
on
you
the
hear them
square.
crying?
That's right.
It starts
And
tonight.
It starts tonight, and you can see Stan's office right there beside that. So
That's right. It
right
probably
there.
won't be open, but you can see
Very
where I'm
good.
at.
Until next time, buddy.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure, Jeff.
This is WDXE, W287AA, and W237FD Lawrenceburg. Broadcast services of Prospect Communications.